When you picture a bridge, you probably picture something fairly simple. A road, some arches or cables, a river underneath. Get in one side, come out the other. Job done. But Britain, it turns out, is absolutely full of bridges that never got that memo. We have bridges that spin, bridges that tilt like a slowly closing eye, bridges that pick your car up and carry it across the river dangling from a giant frame, bridges that carry not a road, but an entire canal full of water and boats, high across a valley, and bridges that curl themselves up into a ball when they're not being used. This is a country with centuries of engineering history, a stubborn refusal to knock old things down, and a real weakness for a clever solution to an awkward problem. Put all that together, and you get some of the strangest, most wonderful bridges anywhere in the world. Today, we're counting down 10 of the strangest bridges in the UK. Not the scariest, not the oldest, the weirdest, the ones that make you tilt your head and ask a simple question. How on earth does that work? And why did somebody build it? Hit subscribe if you want more like this. We do this every week. Let's start with a bridge that solved a very British problem in a very peculiar way by refusing to actually be a bridge at all when it matters most. Number 10. The Penrose Bridge Horns, Bristol. We begin in Bristol's harbourside with a bridge that looks almost normal until you notice the two enormous horns sticking up into the sky above it. Penrose Bridge is a small pedestrian crossing over the floating harbour, and it has become one of the most photographed spots in the city, largely because of those two strange sculptural horns that give it such an unmistakable silhouette. The horns aren't just decoration, although they certainly are eye-catching. They're actually counterweights. Penrose Bridge is a bascule bridge, meaning its central section lifts to let boats pass through, and the pair of great curved horns are part of the mechanism that balances and raises the deck. So the thing that makes it look so odd is also the thing that makes it work. The bridge is named after Pero Jones, an enslaved man brought to Bristol in the 18th century, giving this quirky little crossing a serious historical significance in a city grappling with its past. But visually, it's pure fun. Those horns have been described as looking like everything from a snail's antennae to a pair of nose cones, and locals have a deep affection for them. Now, imagine standing on the harbour side, watching the bridge in action. The central span begins to rise, the two strange horns doing their silent work. A boat slips through the gap, and then the deck settles back down, and pedestrians stream across again as if nothing happened. It's a small thing, but it's genuinely unlike any other bridge you'll have crossed. It's the perfect, gentle introduction to just how weird British bridges are prepared to get, because compared to what's coming, a pair of giant horns is really quite restrained. And if a bridge with horns seems strange, the next one doesn't just look odd. It moves, opening and closing like a giant blinking eye. Number 9. The Gateshead Millennium Bridge. Tyne on the River Tyne, between Gateshead and Newcastle, sits a bridge that does something no bridge had ever done before it. The Gateshead Millennium Bridge, opened in 2001, is the world's first, and still one of the very few, tilting bridges. And when it moves, the whole city stops to watch. Most people know it by its brilliant nickname, the Blinking Eye, or sometimes the Winking Eye. It's made of two huge steel arches, one forming the walkway and one rising above it. To let ships pass underneath, the entire structure tilts, the walkway rising and the upper arch dipping, the two curves rotating together until they form the shape of a slowly closing eyelid. The whole graceful movement takes only around 4 minutes, powered by hydraulic rams. The engineering has some wonderful touches. Because the deck tilts, any litter dropped on it simply rolls down into special traps at each end every time the bridge opens, meaning it effectively cleans itself. When the first tilt took place, 36,000 people lined the banks of the Tyne to watch. It even ended up on a British pound coin. Now imagine standing on the quayside as the alarm sounds and the great curved arches begin, silently and smoothly, to rotate. The walkway lifts into the air, the upper arch swings down toward the water, and for a few moments the bridge becomes a giant eye slowly winking at the river. A boat passes through the gap, and then the whole thing gently rotates back to rest. It's less a piece of infrastructure and more a piece of public theatre, a bridge that turned the simple act of letting a boat through into something the whole region turns out to watch. And if a bridge that blinks amazes you, the next one is even more theatrical, because it doesn't tilt, it curls up completely into a ball. Number 8. The Rolling Bridge, Paddington, London. Tucked away in the Paddington Basin in London is one of the most delightfully bizarre bridges you will ever see. The rolling bridge is a small pedestrian crossing over a section of canal, and for most of the time it looks like a fairly ordinary little footbridge. But when it needs to open, it does something extraordinary. It curls up into a ball. Designed by the celebrated designer Thomas Heatherwick and completed in the mid-2000s, the bridge is made of 8 hinged, triangular steel sections. When a boat needs to pass, hydraulic rams built into the railings cause the whole bridge to slowly curl upwards and inwards, section by section, until the straight walkway has transformed itself into a neat, octagonal ball sitting on one bank of the canal. Then, when the way is clear, it unfurls itself back into a bridge. It's a piece of engineering that behaves more like something alive, a scorpion's tail or a curling leaf, than a bit of street furniture. There's no obvious practical reason it had to be this complicated, and that's rather the point. It's a bridge as sculpture, a bridge designed to surprise and delight, and it does exactly that. Now imagine standing beside the quiet London Canal on the day it opens, watching this perfectly normal-looking footbridge begin, impossibly, to roll itself up. The far end lifts and curls, the sections folding one into the next, until the whole thing has coiled into a tidy ball on the bank. A few minutes later, it unrolls, lies flat, and invites you to walk across as though nothing happened. It's proof that sometimes British engineers build something strange, not because they have to, but simply because they can. And if a bridge that rolls into a ball seems like showing off, the next one is strange for the most practical reason imaginable. It carries your car across the river, hanging from the sky. Number 7. The Newport Transporter Bridge, South Wales. Now we come to one of the rarest types of bridge in the entire world, and Britain is lucky enough to have more than one. The Newport Transporter Bridge, which crosses the River Usk in South Wales, is a transporter bridge, and if you've never seen one work, it's a genuinely startling thing to behold. Here's the problem it was built to solve. At this point on the Usk, back in 1906, the riverbanks were very low, but tall ships still needed to pass. A normal bridge would have needed enormously long approach ramps to get high enough. A ferry couldn't run at low tide, so the engineers came up with something wonderfully odd. They built a tall, skeletal steel structure spanning high above the river, and from it they hung a movable platform, a gondola, on cables. That gondola carries cars and people across the water, dangling beneath the high span like an airborne ferry. Designed by the French engineer Ferdinand Arnaudin and opened in 1906, it's a Grade 1 listed structure and described as the oldest and largest of Britain's surviving transporter bridges. Only a handful of these bridges remain anywhere on Earth. Now imagine arriving at the riverbank in your car and being directed onto what looks like a floating platform slung from a giant metal frame far overhead. The gondola begins to move, and you glide across the River Usk suspended in mid-air, the water flowing beneath you, the great skeletal towers rising on either side. It is not driving over a bridge, it is being carried across by one. It's one of the strangest crossings in Britain, a solution so unusual that the world only ever built a couple of dozen of them. And if being carried across a river by a hanging gondola sounds unique, the next one is its even longer, even grander cousin in the north of England. Number 6. The Middlesbrough Transporter Bridge, Tees. If Newport has the oldest transporter bridge in Britain, Middlesbrough has the longest surviving one in the entire world. The Middlesbrough Transporter Bridge, or the Tees Transporter as it's often known, has spanned the River Tees since 1911, and it is the definitive symbol of the town. Like its Welsh cousin, it works on that same beautifully strange principle. A tall steel structure carries a high span across the river, and beneath it, a suspended gondola shuttles back and forth, carrying cars and passengers across the water in around 90 seconds. The gondola can hold 200 people, or 9 cars, and for over a century it has ferried the people of Teesside across their river, dangling from the ironwork above. The bridge is woven into local life and legend. It has appeared in countless films and TV shows, and in one famous comedy series, the plot involved the bridge being dismantled and shipped off to America, prompting genuinely worried locals to phone in, so attached were they to their strange landmark. It even, on one occasion, caught out an actor who mistook it for a normal toll bridge and drove off the end of the roadway into the safety netting below. Now imagine driving up to the Tees and rolling your car onto the gondola, then standing at the rail as the whole platform lifts away and glides out over the river, suspended from the vast red-painted frame 160 feet above. The far bank drifts toward you. 90 seconds later, you roll off onto solid ground on the other side. It's a Victorian-era answer to a modern problem, still doing its strange job over 100 years later, and utterly beloved for it. And if a bridge that carries cars through the air is odd, the next one carries something even more surprising across the valley, an entire canal. Number 5. The Pont-y Silt Aqueduct. Wales High, above the River Dee in northeast Wales, runs one of the most breathtaking and strange structures in Britain. The Pont-y Silt Aqueduct is not a bridge for cars or for people on foot. It is a bridge that carries a canal, a channel of water complete with boats, more than 100 feet up in the air across an entire valley. Completed in 1805 and designed in part by the great engineer Thomas Telford, it's a masterpiece of the Canal Age and now a World Heritage Site. A narrow iron trough filled with water is carried on top of 18 tall, slender stone piers, striding across the valley for over 300 meters. Narrowboats travel along it as if floating through the sky, and the strangest part is the view from the boat. On one side, there's a towpath with a railing. On the other side, there's nothing at all, just the edge of the iron trough, and then a sheer drop to the valley floor far below. The engineering is so elegant that the water seems to defy sense. Boaters describe the crossing as feeling like sailing through thin air, a canal with no visible means of support, suspended impossibly high above the fields and the river. Now, imagine standing in a narrowboat as it noses out onto the aqueduct. The stone piers fall away beneath you, the valley opens up on either side, and you realize you are floating in a metal trough of water 126 feet above the ground with nothing but air beyond the low iron edge. The boat glides on, serene, across the sky. It's a bridge for water rather than wheels, and it remains one of the most jaw-dropping and peculiar things ever built in Britain. And if a canal in the sky astonishes you, the next one takes the idea of a moving bridge and spins it into something no other country has ever built. Number 4, the Falkirk Wheel, Scotland. In central Scotland stands a bridge unlike anything else on the planet. The Falkirk Wheel is the world's only rotating boat lift, a vast, elegant, spinning machine that picks boats up out of one canal and swings them through the air up to another canal 35 meters higher. The problem it solved was an old one. The Forth and Clyde Canal and the Union Canal sit at very different heights and were once connected by a flight of 11 locks that took the best part of a day to pass through. Those locks were dismantled long ago. So when Scotland reconnected its canals for the new millennium, rather than rebuild the locks, engineers built something spectacular. Opened in 2002, the wheel has two great arms, shaped like a Celtic axe, with a water-filled gondola at the end of each. A boat sails into a gondola, and then the entire wheel rotates, lifting that boat up and over while the gondola on the other side comes down, the two perfectly balanced against each other. The cleverest part is the physics, because each gondola always holds the same weight of water and boat. The whole thing is beautifully balanced, and a single half turn uses only a tiny amount of energy, about the same as boiling a handful of kettles. Now imagine sitting in a boat that floats into a giant caisson at the base of this strange structure. The gates close, and then, silently, the whole world begins to turn. Your boat, cradled in its pod of water, rises smoothly through the air in a great arc, the visitor center shrinking below you, until you're gently delivered to a canal high above where you started. It's part bridge, part fairground ride, part sculpture, and there is genuinely nothing else like it anywhere in the world. And if a spinning boat lift is the strangest bridge you can imagine, the next one is strange in a much older, much eerier way. Number 3, the Bridge of Sighs, Cambridge and Oxford. Some bridges are strange because of how they move. Others are strange because of where they are and what goes on beneath them. Tucked into the historic colleges of both Oxford and Cambridge are covered bridges known as the Bridge of Sighs, and they are among the most peculiar and atmospheric crossings in the country. Named after the famous enclosed bridge in Venice, these are fully covered stone bridges, enclosed like corridors, that link one part of a college to another across a river or a lane. The Cambridge Bridge of Sighs at St John's College arches over the River Cam and is one of the most photographed spots in the city, a covered, windowed passage that students cross between courts. The Oxford version at Hertford College leaps over a public lane, a covered bridge connecting two halves of the college high above the heads of passers-by. What makes them strange is the sheer enclosed secrecy of them. These aren't open crossings with a view, they're private, roofed passageways, and there are wonderful local legends attached, including tales of students climbing on top of them, and even a story of a car being hoisted up and left balanced on one as a prank. Now, imagine walking through one on a misty morning. You step off a college court into an enclosed stone corridor, cross high above the river or the lane below through a covered, echoing passage, glimpsing the world outside through the stone windows, and step out into another part of the college entirely, having crossed a river without ever really being outside. They're strange not for their engineering, but for their atmosphere, secret covered bridges hidden inside some of the oldest institutions in the country. And if a covered secret bridge intrigues you, the runner-up is a bridge that famously and repeatedly refused to work at all. Number 2, the Millennium Bridge, London. Some bridges become strange by accident. When London's Millennium Bridge, a sleek pedestrian crossing over the Thames between St Paul's Cathedral and the Tate Modern, opened in the year 2000, it was meant to be a triumph of modern engineering. Instead, it became famous for one of the most peculiar bridge stories in recent memory. It wobbled. On its opening day, huge crowds streamed across the elegant new steel structure, and the bridge began to sway alarmingly from side to side. What nobody had fully anticipated was a phenomenon that came to be called synchronous lateral excitation. As the bridge swayed very slightly, people instinctively adjusted their footsteps in time with the movement to keep their balance, and that synchronized walking pushed the bridge to sway even more, which made people synchronize even harder. A feedback loop had accidentally been created between the crowd and the structure. The wobble was so pronounced that the brand new bridge was closed after just 2 days, earning it the immediate and lasting nickname, the Wobbly Bridge. It stayed shut for nearly 2 years while engineers fitted dozens of dampers to absorb the movement at considerable cost. When it reopened, it was rock solid, and it has been ever since. Now imagine being in that opening day crowd, stepping onto a gleaming new bridge over the Thames, and feeling the whole deck start to sway beneath your feet, everyone around you unconsciously falling into the same swaying step, the movement building and building until it feels genuinely unnerving. It's strange precisely because it was so unexpected, a cutting-edge bridge undone by the simple, unplanned rhythm of human footsteps, and remembered forever for its very British wobble. And that brings us to number 1, a bridge so strange it barely counts as a bridge at all. Number 1, the Holy Island Causeway, Lindisfarne. For the number 1 spot, we end with the crossing that most completely defies what a bridge is supposed to be, because for hours at a time, it simply isn't there. The causeway to Holy Island, off the coast of Northumberland, is a real tarmacked road that carries cars across to the island of Lindisfarne, and twice every single day, the North Sea rises up and swallows it completely. This is a crossing ruled entirely by the tide. For part of the day, the causeway sits open and dry, an ordinary-looking road running out across the sands and mud flats to the island. Then the tide turns, the water floods in from both sides, and the road disappears beneath the sea, cutting Holy Island off from the mainland entirely. Safe crossing times are published in tide tables, printed on signs, and posted at both ends, and drivers are urged to check them and not to chance it. And yet, with grim regularity, people do chance it. Every year, drivers ignore the tide tables, set off too late, and find the water rising around their car halfway across. The causeway is famous for the sight of vehicles stranded and slowly submerging, their owners forced to scramble to a wooden refuge box raised on stilts above the water, where they wait sheepishly to be rescued by boat or helicopter as their car vanishes beneath the waves. Now imagine driving out across the sands, the sea drawn back on either side, the island ahead. You've checked the times, you know you have a window. Behind you, if you got it wrong, the North Sea would already be creeping across the tarmac, quietly erasing the only road home. It's the strangest bridge of all, a road that is only sometimes a road, appearing and vanishing with the moon and the tide, and it's the perfect end to a list that proves the humble British crossing is capable of far, far more than simply getting you across the water. So there you have it, 10 of the strangest bridges in Britain. Bridges with horns, bridges that blink, bridges that roll into a ball, and bridges that spin boats through the sky, bridges that carry canals over valleys, bridges that carry cars through the air, bridges that wobble, and bridges that vanish beneath the sea twice a day. For a country that invented so much of the modern world's engineering, Britain has always had a wonderful willingness to solve a problem in the oddest way possible, and to keep these strange old solutions alive long after simpler ones came along. We don't knock them down, we celebrate them, put them on coins and postage stamps, and turn out in our thousands to watch them move. Because a bridge, it turns out, doesn't have to be just a way across. Sometimes it can be the most extraordinary thing for miles around. Thanks for watching.